we do have such a high priest who sat down at the right side of the Majesty in heaven and who ministers in the sanctuary of heaven. We need to look again at Hebrews chapter 7. It says that on the one hand there's an annulment of the previous command, that's the law. As the law did not bring anything to completion, so the law had to be annulled. Did you hear that? No law exists from God today whose commandments we must obey. It says there is an annulment of the law. It's annulled. As an annulment of the previous command. Why? Because it's weak and useless. If you're still are a Christian, you say, and follow the law, you're following something weak, you're following something useless. If you're following something weak, won't do you any good. If you're following something useless, it won't get you to heaven. If you are following the law, you will not go to heaven. It's useless. Won't get you there. Because it isn't the superior hope. It's useless. It says the contrast to the law. On the other hand, there is the introduction of a superior hope. What's our superior hope? Through the gospel, through which we draw near to God. Now that happens because God swore an oath. He did not swear an oath about the law of Moses. He swore an oath about this hope, and this is it. God said to Christ, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. We go to Psalm 110. I'm reading from Net translation. Here is the Lord's proclamation to my Lord. The Lord, of course, is God. My Lord is Christ. Sit down at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. The Lord extends your dominion, O Christ, from Zion. Rule in the midst of your enemies. The Lord makes his promise an oath and will not revoke it. He never did any such thing to the law of Moses. You are an eternal priest after the pattern, it says here, of Melchizedek. He says you are an eternal priest after the pattern of Melchizedek. So if Melchizedek is quoted as being the one whose pattern becomes that of Christ, Christ is an eternal priest. What kind of a priest was and is Melchizedek? What kind of a being is this? There is no answer. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Well, you never find an answer by wondering. I don't believe there is an answer in our present scriptures. If we had the missing scriptures, we might find the answer. Unless somebody knows something that I don't know, which is possible. But there it is. Jesus Christ is an eternal priest after the pattern of Melchizedek. Now other translations say order. EBR says after the manner of Melchizedek. Easy English, you will always be a priest as Melchizedek was. That's what they say. ERV is after the order of Melchizedek. ISV is after the manner of Melchizedek. The King James Version meaning says cause, manner, or reason. So they even follow the manner. So does the LEB, SLT, after the manner of Melchizedek. TVT, which is a good translation because it's done by that group who go to the foreign tribes and set down their language in writing. It says, you will be a priest forever like Melchizedek was, a priest forever. like he was. So what kind of a person is this Melchizedek? We're still not sure, but this is what is said. Then it says in Hebrews 7, so to the same degree Jesus has become the pledge of a superior covenant to the old covenant. There were only two covenants, the old and the new. But of course there was the Abrahamic covenant, there was the Adamic covenant, there was the Mosaic covenant, there was the Davidic covenant, but by and large we deal with two, the old and the new. Then it says, there have been numerous priests, because death prevented them from staying in office. So if Melchizedek is still in office, he hasn't died. Where is he? Who is he? It is not without the realm of possibility that God can do, and he does, do what he likes with his creation, and what he has done we do not know, and will never know, unless some scriptures turn up of which we're unaware. He created Enoch. Enoch was born in a natural way, but when he became older, something happened to him. He had an experience with God. The point is, he was different from anybody else. Adam was different from everybody else, except we all follow him. We don't follow Enoch. Enoch was different from everybody else. Isaiah was different from everybody else. Isaiah saw the Lord up there in the seventh heaven. Nobody else has seen him like that. Only Isaiah, one person. Each an individual that I've quoted. Each there for a special purpose. God if he wanted to, he could do what we would never imagine, which he possibly did, in relation to Melchizedek. The point I'm making is the Melchizedek priesthood is an amazing, miraculous, supernatural, heavenly priesthood. And Jesus Christ is high priest in heaven on your behalf and my behalf, after the manner or order of Melchizedek. So because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. So what's going on with Melchizedek? We still don't know. Jesus is high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. There can be only one high priest. I'm not even suggesting that Melchizedek would be a high priest. Now, I don't know what the answer is. Then it says, because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. And so he is completely able to rescue and preserve those who come to God through him. What we need to know about this record in Hebrews 7 in relation to Jesus Christ is there as a continuation of chapter 1 that talks about the greatness of Jesus Christ. In chapter 1 it says, God through his Son, Jesus, made all the periods of time which exist. The Son is the radiance of God's splendor and the exact likeness of his real name. It's the only place in the New Testament where it says exact likeness. But the same Greek word for like and likeness would apply to Melchizedek and Jesus Christ. Now, wouldn't it? But this is the exact likeness. He produces everything by the power of his spoken word. Jesus Christ is talking about. After he, Jesus Christ, had provided for the cleansing of sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. That's the greatness of Jesus Christ. He became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is more distinguished than theirs. Now what about Melchizedek? Again, we do not know. Did God ever say this? to an angel, "You are my son, and today I have become your father." Hebrews 7 is a continuation of this chapter, which is about the greatness of Jesus Christ. So he's great in his high priesthood. Then all the angels had to worship Jesus Christ. And it is said by God, Lord. See, in verse 8, to the Son he says, God. To the Son, God says, God, your throne is forever and ever, and the scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom, the kingdom of righteousness. You have loved justice and hated lawlessness. For this reason, God, your God, and he's saying this to God, Jesus Christ. God, your God, Jesus Christ, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of great happiness, rather than those who are in partnership with you. Jesus Christ is preeminently exalted. And then God says to Jesus Christ, Lord, in the beginning you laid the foundations of the earth. And then he says, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies into a footstool for your feet. A fulfillment of Psalm 110, where he's going to make his enemies his footstool. So in verse 9 of chapter 2, we see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels. So when we come to chapter 7, it's about this great God, Jesus Christ. Here in chapter 7, in chapter 1, it's not about so much as he is the Son, except that it does say in chapter 1, in verse 2, in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed to be heir of everything. There is no other heir of everything. I'm not trying to place Melchizedek on a level with Jesus Christ, but there's something special about it that we fail to grasp. Through his Son, he made all the periods of time and so forth. And we went through that. Now when we come to chapter 7, it goes on to chapter 8. This is the main point. We do have such a high priest who sat down at the right side of the Majesty in heaven, and who ministers in the sanctuary of heaven, the true tabernacle in heaven, erected by the Lord, not by people. Jesus Christ is in heaven, supernaturally, if you like to put it that way, in a heavenly way, acting as our high priest in the sanctuary in heaven. He's not doing it on earth. He's there in heaven. Your high priest is there in heaven for you. Your high priest is there before the throne of God for you. Even one of the Charles Wesley wrote these words, before the throne my surety stands. You see, Jesus Christ is the surety of the new covenant. It says so in Hebrews. He's the surety. Before the throne my surety stands. His name is written in my hands. Charles Wesley knew a truth in that. We should know it too. Before the throne my surety Jesus Christ stands. And I remember we used to sing that often. Such a glorious truth and a glorious hymn. So Jesus Christ is there as our high priest. Now every high priest has something to offer on earth. But in fact the ministry that has fallen to Jesus is as superior to theirs as the covenant of which he is mediator is superior to the old one, seeing that it has been legislated on the basis of better promises. So we have a change of law, a change of priesthood, a superior ministry as priesthood, a superior covenant, the new covenant. So why would anybody want to go back to the old covenant when we're under the superior new covenant? If you're going back to the Old Testament to live your Christian life, you're going back to something that's inferior. You should stay in the New Testament and follow the superior. Because it says if the first covenant had been blameless, there would have been no need for a second. And because God found fault with the Israelites, if you are trying to keep the law, God will be finding fault with you. You haven't a hope, have you? If you're following the law, you haven't a hope. Because it says so. Because God found fault with the Israelites, he said. Indeed, the days are coming when I will finish off a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. We're under the new covenant, and he's finished it off. And he said, it's not like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them out of Egypt, because they did not remain in my covenant, and I neglected them. If you're trying to remain in the old covenant, you don't have a hope of eternal life. You're on your way to hell. Jesus had to come for a new covenant, because this is the covenant, said God, I will draw up with the house of Israel. I will put my laws in their understanding and write them on their hearts. If you want to know the will of God, you've got something written on your heart. Let the Holy Spirit reveal it to you. You might have read it in the New Testament. It doesn't matter. He's put something in your understanding. He's written it on your hearts. He's your God, and we are his people. Anybody who's following the law is not the people of God. Anybody who follows the law doesn't belong to the people of God. They're the people of Satan. They're not the people of God. Then he says, I will be merciful to them. By calling this covenant new, he has made the first one absolute. If you're following the Old Testament, you're following something that's been put away, it's out of order, it's finished, it's obsolete. You're not even saved. What is obsolete in ages is close to ceasing to exist. Of course, this was at the time when they wrote the book of Hebrews, which was before AD 70. It ceased to exist forever in AD 70. Then it goes on in the next chapter to talk about the meanings in the Old Testament in relation to the New. Now it says that we have a holy, blameless, and undefiled high priest who resembles Melchizedek. Strange, isn't it? It's in the power of an endless life. He is testified to about in Psalm 110. The Lord said to my Lord, says David, a Messiah. God says to the Son, you, Lord, made the foundation of the earth. But when we read about the real Melchizedek, there's nothing like this about it. Strange. What the connection is can only be this. He's like the Son of God. That's what it says. He's like the Son of God. That's why the Torah and the Pharisees disliked Jesus. He was the Son of God. The Judaizers in Babylon came and persecuted Jesus and killed him. The Rosicrucians followed this hatred. So did Sir Francis Bacon. So did the Freemasons. And so did the Essenes, that a lot of scholars promote as being a wonderful people because they discovered the scrolls in the Dead Sea. They were not. They were not. They refused to accept Jesus Christ, and they were against him. So where does that leave us? It leaves us heading for the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem that John saw in vision coming down from heaven to earth. And the light of God is in the midst. The light that will never go out. No need for a sun, because Christ the light is there. God provides the light. Jesus Christ is the light. And it is said the tabernacle of God is with men. Even though God throughout the book of Revelation shows there are angels of the presence. They're mentioned throughout the chapters. And when Isaiah ascended to the seventh heaven, he saw different angels in the presence of God than there were in the sixth heaven, or the fifth heaven, or the fourth heaven, or the third heaven, or the second heaven, or the first heaven. The Apostle Paul said, and he was referring to himself, he knew a man who was up in the third heaven. That was him. Paul only went to the third heaven. He never went to the seventh. There are angels of the presence up in the seventh heaven. They will be there as the tabernacle of God is with men. So God now becomes Emmanuel. Because Jesus is Emmanuel, Matthew 1:23, as the angel said to Joseph, you shall call his name, he is Emmanuel, God with us. Now we read about this new heavens and new earth in Isaiah 66:22, and it says, I will be his God, and he, you and I, shall be my son. But you know who's going to be left out? Revelation 21 verse 8. But the cowards, the unbelievers, the detestable persons, the murderers of babies, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic spells, the idol worshippers, shall be cast into the lake of fire and sulphur. That is the second death. That's going to be the end of all those who know not Jesus Christ. But to those of us who truly follow Jesus Christ and obey him and who endure to the end, our destination is God with us in the tabernacle that he designs and builds, of which we know little, but he is in our midst forever and ever, in glory, in glory. The Lord bless you. A change of law, a change of priesthood, a superior ministry as priesthood,